Everybody, one of my favorites is back on the show today. He's one of the most, or if not the most popular and famous, and one of the best Browns YouTubers on YouTube. He's working for Bleacher Report and sometimes Cleveland.com. Also, Quincy, you back on the show today, brother. Thank you so much for taking your time to come back. How you feeling? How's summer life treating you?
You know, it was pretty good until we had the one news story break. And then, they you don't ever want to hear anything during this time. But other than that, it's been a pretty solid offseason so far for the Browns. And me personally, I'm just trying to get my old body back in the gym. You know what I mean? Like trying to fight through the soreness. I'm not young like y'all these days. I can't just recover like that no more.
Yeah. I'm always thinking, because you always have these comments about getting older. And what are you like? You just edged 30, right?
Yeah.
Does 30 feel that old?
It just feels a lot different than 20. That's what 30 really, because when you're 20, I remember when I was in college, I used to be able to hoop for 9 hours a day, then get 5 hours of sleep, do all of my school, go out, hoop again. I used to pull 2-a-days at the gym and nothing would bother you. And then stuff starts bothering you once you get to 30, and it's just the first time you're dealing with it. It's not that bad. I bet when you're 50, 60, it is worse, but it's just you start feeling your body fight back when you're 30 in a way that when you're in your 20s, your body fights back a little bit, but it ain't gonna ruin your week. It might ruin your week at 30, and that's kind of the difference.
Dang, man, that's crazy. But let's hop into everything. I'm gonna stop getting on you for your age and everything. Quincy, how many years you been in the industry again, man? How many years you been doing this?
I started doing this 2018 on YouTube. Went to school, studied this, so it's been a while. I've been pretty locked in on this for we're approaching a decade now.
Yeah, it's crazy. Aside from last year as an analyst for the Browns, what has been your most difficult season to cover the team?
2019 was awful. 2019 was bad. Because I had season tickets that year. I had really bought in that was going to be the Baker Mayfield blow up year. I thought this was going to change everything. And it just you could see week by week realizing no, I don't think we're going to be able to do it. Right. There was a couple of weeks. I remember feeling really uneasy when Mac Wilson was on Building the Browns talking about how excited he was that they barely lost to the team that was in the Super Bowl the last year. And I was like, oh, we're in trouble. We're not where we think we are right now, right? That was a tough season, the Baker Mayfield stuff and, how volatile it was here in Cleveland with him and just the environment of talking about him. Usually that's what gets on my nerves the most is when somebody has a super dedicated fan base and they're not really willing to listen to reason. I'm the guy they get mad at, right? Because I'm not really going to pick a side as much as I'm going to just evaluate what I'm seeing and bring up precedent to tell you what's realistic or not. In those situations, right, with Baker Mayfield, any year that he struggled or succeeded, and right now it's dealing with people who are really into the shedeur thing, or even the people who are really against it. I've noticed that they are just as ridiculous in this whole conversation because I'll read stuff. I'm like, what? That's insane. So it's always a balance. There's always some joy to get out of every season, even when it's not a fun one, right? And there are tough parts of even good seasons, right? There were parts of 2023 that weren't really fun to cover, right? Deshaun Watson in and out, what's going on with the shoulder, all the conspiracy theories that existed with that. 2020 had a stretch where people were not even that interested, right? There's always going to be ups and downs in the season. Some have better endings than others, right? But, there's always going to be those kind of peaks and valleys. Even last year, look, Jameis winning that game against the Steelers, that was great. I felt great, covering that. So, there's always going to be something good to take away from a season. There's always going to be something bad. 2019 specifically, though, even though the record was better, there was no singular moment where you're like, oh, this team did something impressive, right? Like, at least last year had the Ravens upset and the Steelers win, right? Like, if you look at 2019, is like they won the games they were supposed to win. Maybe you can include the Buffalo one, but that's not the Buffalo we know and love today.
Yeah. I feel like the one game in 2019 where I actually felt a little hope was, I think it was week 4 in Baltimore when we got the W and Nick Chubb ran for like over 100 and had that long touchdown. That was the one.
You're right.
That was the one game in 2019 where I had the slightest hope, and I think they came out and put up a stinker the very next week, and we got no sort of hope at all after that.
And then right after that, Lamar Jackson goes on a run of a lifetime, right? Yeah. Like literally that loss spurred them to never lose a game in the regular season again. And they sprinted to the top of the division and we sprinted to the bottom. But you're all right. That game was magical, though. Like, I forgot about that one. Yeah. So the 2019 season did at least have that one. And that kind of just goes to my points where it's like every season has a high, right? So maybe 2022. No, 2022 we beat Baker Mayfield in the opener, the K York field goal. Yeah.
So I mean, with that being considered, with the highs and lows, does your emotional investment in the team ever make it harder to like simply just do your job?
I love football more than I love any individual team, right? Like, that's kind of the way I walk into it. I'm here because, like, I'm a Browns fan. I'm invested in the Browns. I'm invested in the city of Cleveland, right? When the Browns win, Cleveland wins. But also, I love the game of football too much to lie about it, right? So that makes it pretty easy for me to be able to draw a line to, okay, this is what I want to have happen. This is what I hope happens for the team, but this is what it looks like right now. There are some things that are going to be in a gray area, right? Like, my fandom might incline me to be more optimistic towards those things. But more than often, I'm just trying to look at stuff from the football and seeing like, hey, can this benefit the Cleveland Browns, or is this going to be something that's going to impede their growth? I just kind of keep it at that mindset. I think it's not really interesting to be a fan and just be super negative all the time or to be super positive all the time. I think part of being a fan is like, hey, like you get emotional investment, right? An emotional roller coaster. Sometimes you're very disappointed. Sometimes you get moments of joy. Like, that emotional roller coaster for me is part of why I love watching football and rooting for the Cleveland Browns. I like to just kind of keep an open mind at all times and not get too bogged down by, whatever shit I'm bringing into it, Yeah.
You're just a talented brother overall. Like, let's just get that out there. And I wouldn't be asking this next question if you weren't who you were. But I'm not trying to be messy or anything at the same time, though, because I know your stance on this company. So, if ESPN calls your phone tomorrow, what's the answer?
It's probably no. Like, I don't imagine they would offer something that would be competitive with what I do now, right? The amount of control, the amount of freedom I have doing this. If it were something where they were willing to collaborate with me, and still allow me to do some of the stuff that I like to do, then it might be. But if it's just like a generic, because let's be real here, like, I'm not, my channel's not as big as like That's Good Sports, right? Like, I'm not going to walk into ESPN and get the Pat McAfee treatment, right? They're probably going to bring me in on a base analyst deal and I'm going to have to do the base ESPN stuff. That just doesn't seem like a really appealing route for me, right? Like, to kind of do the whole sports entertainment thing and not really be able to put my spin on it. I think I could just fall into the background and be another voice. I think what makes me unique is that I have a different approach to it than most people. And I think if you're just a general hire at ESPN, you don't really have the chance to change that, right? Like, It's one thing if you are a big name and you get brought in, you can try to change things from within inside. But if you're going to be a foot soldier, you think you're going to change things from inside. I just don't think that's a great strategy in order to do it. I think you just kind of become another cog in the machine.
If the Browns do surprisingly exceed expectations this year, in your opinion, why would that be?
If the Browns exceed expectations, one, I think the defense would have to be pretty good, pretty amazing, right? Like one of the better defenses in the NFL. And probably because you have a surprise at the quarterback position. Not necessarily like, oh my God, this quarterback is like already in the Pro Bowl, but you can insert whoever it is, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, maybe even Kenny Pickett. They play similarly as good as like a Tua, right? Like they get to that level of play where it's like, hey, like you might have like the 15th best quarterback here, or you get a Sam Darnold year from Kenny Pickett. That's the thing where I'm like, okay, all of a sudden, if they're competent at quarterback, this goes from a team I'm not comfortable predicting over 500 to a team that I am very comfortable with predicting being over 500. I think quarterback play has really hurt this team over the last year. Success rate, if you look at it per quarterbacks with over 100 snaps, the Browns had 46 and 47 last year in Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Deshaun Watson. Out of all eligible quarterbacks, it's the worst number success percentage that any quarterback put up. Jameis Winston looked like a world of difference. He was at 29, right? And just Jameis Winston being at 29 allowed you to beat 2 playoff teams for a team that won 3 games last year. That tells you that the talent is there. The Browns are a talented enough team to compete with a lot of these teams in the AFC as they stand right now. The problem is, can they get consistency at the quarterback position? Because when they've gotten decent quarterback play, and again, the 2 games they won against playoff teams, they got decent quarterback play out of Jameis Winston. They're able to go toe-to-toe with these guys. Like they even beat Baltimore on the road. The issue with Cleveland is that consistency at the quarterback position. So if they get that, they'll be a playoff team, possibly a team that can make some noise and get out the first round. But that's the big question going into this season and maybe even next season is exactly how are we going to address the quarterback position to get consistency and above average play from it. And I think that's the main goal of this year, right? If you get that question solved, then you're going to be successful. But if you don't get that question solved, or you don't feel like you're close to an answer by the end of the year, then we're in a dark place.
Okay, so with that being said, and then when we're looking at the Browns given situation, what's the smartest approach they can take with playing their quarterbacks this year?
I would avoid any young quarterback in those first 6 games. I don't think that's we have to have learned from what we did to DTR, right? Like maybe not throw him against like some of the toughest opponents that we have while we're still trying to install an offense with the offense. Like I just think wait those first 6 weeks, see what the season is telling you. Maybe Joe Flacco surprises you. Maybe Joe Flacco doesn't. After that, then it becomes about what you saw in training camp, right? Dylan Gabriel is probably the guy by default that's going to get the first swing of the rookies because he's the guy that they see as more pro ready because of his college experience. I am not as like high on college experience, but to be fair, the people I know who scout for a living are very high on college experience for whatever reason, right? So it's not an abnormal theory that the Browns have going into it. It's just not mine. And yeah, maybe Dylan Gabriel shows enough in camp to where they keep that arrangement, but I wouldn't be surprised if Shedeur showed enough in camp to change that arrangement as well, right? We saw this with DTR, where DTR came into camp and basically made Josh Dobbs expendable, right? Wouldn't it be that much a surprise if Shedeur was able to do that with Dylan Gabriel? It wouldn't be a surprise if Dylan Gabriel was able to maintain that spot. So I think the way I look at this quarterback room is people are kind of selling you as like this is a fatal 4-way, right? And it's all 4 quarterbacks going for it at once. I don't really think that's the case. I think this is really a competition between Kenny Pickett and the idea of Joe Flacco in the coaching staff's mind, whoever wins that battle, right? The coaching staff's going to know what Joe Flacco can and can't do. If they look at Kenny Pickett and think he can do the same things or better, they're going to go with Kenny. But during that process, they're going to leave the door open for Dylan and shedeur. They're going to give him a first team rep every once in a while, see what they can do with it, to see if they can blow them away in a way to where they can be considered for starting week 1. But more than likely, it's going to be between those two to see who starts week 1. And then what you see in camp will determine how they move after those veterans, I think, inevitably get benched during the season.
Yeah. I'm only asking this because it's been talked about recently with the quinshon stuff popping up. It really has nothing to do with the case that he's kind of involved in right now, but it has more so to do with the outcome of the Browns draft picks and what is taking place. It's just the blunt question: can Andrew Berry draft?
Well, the thing with Andrew Berry's drafts are, I think the 2021 and 2020 drafts are objectively bad. I did a whole video about it, right? Where I'm like, objectively speaking, these drafts aren't that good. Yeah. To be fair to him, I think 2023, 2024, and 2025, we'll see what that is, right? When he has all these resources. But I do think the drafts prior to 2025 have been a significant improvement, right? Like, I've been doing my redraft series and I was going through the 2023 draft. There's like 2 picks I would change there, right? It's like Siaki Ika, and then I forget who else, Dorian Thompson-Robinson. So yeah, I would say I don't know if Andrew Berry can't draft. I don't want to just make a judgment like, oh, his first few drafts were awful, he's a bad drafter. It's his first few drafts. Like, I don't think that's a fair evaluation of him. What he's been really good at throughout his career has been his pro personnel ability. His drafting ability has seemed to have to catch up to his pro personnel ability. And the last couple of years are promising. Like, when I look at the philosophy of what they did in this year's draft, I like it. We'll see what the results look like for this draft. I mean, he might be somebody who needs to lean on his assistants more for drafting, right? Like, people bring up John Dorsey all the time, and they talk about how great of a GM John Dorsey is, because most people's view of a GM is only about what they do in the draft. But there's more to that job than just the draft. And if you look at John Dorsey's draft, there's no denying, like, John Dorsey can scout. Like, there's no denying that.
Yeah.
What John Dorsey is awful with everything else that you have to do as a GM, right? Contracts, relationship managing. He reminds me of somebody who, like, a defensive coordinator who doesn't need to be a head coach anymore, but can be like a great assistant. And that's what John Dorsey is for Detroit. He's a great assistant. I think with Andrew, I think those assistants under him are going to be really important when it comes to the draft, because, they brought in Catherine Ritchie, right? I think is her name. Catherine Ritchie from the Argonauts, I believe, in the CFL. And you can see like a line of when these people were brought in, the draft's getting much better, right? Mm-hmm. So I think with Andrew, this is an area where he is probably starting to understand that it's important for him to trust his scouts versus whatever his instincts may be, because maybe they're not the best instincts for drafting. But that can be addressed with just having good personnel hires right underneath you. And I think that's what's going on with Andrew. So we'll see. I think this 2025 draft is make or break. If he's successful with it, people are going to look at him like, hey, he can draft. Mason Graham became a top player. Then we got that pick right on top of it. If he can't do this, then he's probably going to be on path to be a top pro personnel assistant for the rest of his career, but maybe not somebody they trust with the whole thing.
Yeah, I've always been under the impression that I think people just need to give Barry more patience as it pertains to the verdict on if he can do it or not. Because I think he's made enough good picks to allow us to hold out and making that final say of saying he can't draft. So do you think it's also a patience thing? Or people not giving Andrew Berry enough patience as it pertains to this argument?
I think it's been complicated, right? Because like you have picks that look really good early, like Martin Emerson, and then you get like a really down year from Martin, right? And it kind of shakes where you are with him, or even like Donovan Peoples-Jones, where it's like, oh, that looks amazing, and then kind of fizzles out, right? And that's happened a couple of times with Andrew, where it's like, oh, we're getting this, and then it fizzles out, and I don't know really what to make of it. I think another thing with Andrew that has to be factored in is he was kneecapped, and we can make the argument of who decided to make this move. It seems to be clear who the Browns are pointing the finger at, but the Deshaun Watson trade, like, kind of like hurts your ability to evaluate him as a drafter because he's starting these picks like in the third round, right? Like, and that's not necessarily the best spot to start as a GM. So I do think there is some patience that people need to exercise here. The difficulty with that is that he's been here for 5 years, right? And we're like, oh yeah, be patient, right? So a lot of people are like, what do we want? You want us to wait till like year 7 with Andrew Berry to figure it out? I think the truth is like this draft right here, this class right here, how we feel about it in 3 years will really determine how we feel about Andrew Berry, because I think you can push it either way right now. You can swing the pendulum and paint his drafting to make it seem like he's the worst GM of all time. I've seen people do that. You can turn it the other way and look at the value he got here in DeJuan Jones in the 4th, and look at the trades he's made around the edges, and make it seem like Andrew Berry's secretly one of the best drafting GMs ever. I think it's inconclusive at this point. And I think this 2025 draft, where there's no excuse, he has the resources he wanted. He had the top 50 picks. He should be able to add somebody to this core of roster of guys who have been, like, when we bring up the Browns, we're like Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, right? Nick Chubb for the longest. He should be able to add a name to that with this year's draft class. One of these guys he's took should be that. And, you know, if he does that, then people will look at him as a successful drafter, or at least as good as average in the draft.
Yeah. All right, let's pivot. I'm a little excited about this next one, Quincy, because I watched one of your Cavs videos, and you said something that went totally against my whole agenda as it pertains to Donovan Mitchell as a point guard. I was upset with you. You know you're one of my favorites, but I wasn't too happy about this. But my question is if the Cavs ever were to get into a situation where Donovan has to be the listed point guard in the starting lineup, and not necessarily have to be your prototypical Tyrese Halliburton type point guard, but if he's in a role where he's listed as point guard, and like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is more of in a combo guard role, do you think the Cavs would be able to win and be successful in that way? I do, because I feel as if because we already know he's a great scorer, and I think he's just shown so much greatness as a passer that I think it becomes a pick your poison situation with Donovan. So I think him as a combo guard, where you kind of give him the option to be one or the other, is just based off of his instinct. When's the opportunity and when is it right to pull out the scoring and pull out the passing, which I think he showed he's able to do that in, I think it was 2023, the year Garland was out for a stretch. But if he's in a role where, like Shai was this year, he's not like the prototypical floor general, but he's the combo guard listed as point guard, do you think the Cavs could win in a situation like that?
My only issue with that, right, is you are asking a player who has, for his whole career, has been an attacker, right, like a bucket getter, to kind of play with different instincts than the ones he's developed over his career. Well, he's been in the league, 9? Is he 10 years? No, he can't be 10 years.
He's nearing 10 years. I think he's
coming up on it.
I think this is his 8th season, if I'm not mistaken.
8th season. So like for 8 years, he's been an attacker, and you kind of switch him up to trying to be more of a facilitator. Can Donovan Mitchell do it? I agree with you. He's shown that he can do it. Is that the best use of Donovan Mitchell, in my opinion? Probably not. Like, I think Donovan Mitchell's at his best when he's just asked to be a bucket getter, right? When he's asked to get you 40, when he's, asked to make threes that he's wide open on, right? Like, that's where Donovan Mitchell is his most efficient. That's where he is his most effective. And I think if you ask him to kind of play that point guard role, he might be able to do it. but he's not going to be the same caliber of player that you're expecting out of that role. Like he's not going to be as good at that as he is as just being a straight up two, right? And I think that's the issue I have with it. I think with Donovan, he's somebody who I think benefits more from having somebody who can handle some of those heavier lift offensive stuff. Like you look out through his career, he's always had somebody in that role. And to ask that to change, it's different. And I'm sure Donovan will be able to be an all-star doing it. I don't know if that's going to be a change that'll lead to Cleveland getting over the hump, or if that's something you want to do for a whole season. Also with Donovan, like his handle isn't bad. I don't want to say his handle is bad, but it's not like when you watch Darius play, Darius's handle is so he can get around the court. Donovan's handle is so he can get to the hoop, right? Which is different, right? And his instincts once he gets going at full speed isn't to look around, it's to finish the play, which as a two I love, right? But when he was out there trying to like kind of beat his combo guard during the Pacers series, there were a lot of times where you're like, oh, he could have swung that ball. It got it like an open corner three, and we're just not getting that shot anymore.
Can I interrupt you there?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to interrupt you there. I feel like using the Pacers series as an example of why Donovan might not be able to be a combo guard is kind of a bad way to assess it. Only because I feel like Donovan was in such of an attack mode in that type of situation because he was kind of the only guy on the court that proved he could actually get a bucket. And I felt like for Donovan, it was more so of I don't want to say a justified hero ball situation, but I think the Pacers series was kind of a situation where he didn't necessarily trust, and rightfully so, the assets that he had around him. And therefore, I wouldn't blame him for taking on that role of, okay, at this point, I just got to do it myself.
To clarify, like kind of what you mean, well, like in this scenario where Donovan would take on that combo role, what kind of like, what do you have around him at that point? Like, are you talking about trading Darius Garland? Like, kind of, how would you envision the team to build it around Donovan as a combo guard? Because that'll give me a better understanding of kind of like what exactly we're asking them to do.
So I think with Donovan as a combo guard, the first thing that pops off to me is the fact that you can kind of move out of a situation where you have a smaller backcourt. Because Donovan's a good defender. I feel if you have him in a position where he's at point guard and he's the smallest guy on the court and he's a good defender, and you can have a taller guy next to him who's also a good defender, I think that'd be really good. If you could get a shooting guard next to him that can also aid him in getting his own bucket and allow Donovan to feel like he doesn't have to do it all by himself, I think that'd be really good. So I don't necessarily know a player that really comes to mind when we think of that, but like a bucket getter to some degree. When we're talking about wing, I think we're talking about a prototypical 3-and-D wing. I think.
Are you talking about like a Devin Booker?
A Devin Booker for shooting guard?
Yeah. Like to put next to Donovan?
Yeah, I feel like that would be a nice guy for him. Not somebody who demands as many touches as Devin Booker does, but maybe a guy in that role who can get his own bucket but doesn't have to be ball dominant. And then I think at the wing position, like I said, a 3-and-D guy, Mobley at power forward, and then a stretch big at the center position.
So you want to get the team. You basically want to make it so that Donovan's the smallest player on the floor, right? Like you want to get the team a lot bigger.
Yes.
And okay, so if like that's the idea, and you want to run Donovan out at like a combo point where he's like handling the ball, kind of the primary, but like facilitating the offense. Yeah, I see what you mean. It would address some of the concerns you have about the Cavs, because part of the Cavs problem, I've always said this, people think they're soft, they're undersized, right? They're just a small team. Yeah. Like And that's going to lead to certain things happening to you throughout the series. And this would fix that problem. I do worry that some of the offensive code snaps that we have seen from the Cavs in the playoffs could be amplified by a group that's like kind of more focused on being bigger, because you're probably sacrificing a lot of offensive prowess to be able to do that, right? So that would be a concern there. And then also like ball movement, like if you're getting rid of all these guys who can really push, facilitate the ball, and move it, then you're also taking out Darius and putting in Donovan, who's not as good at that. And like, even if we don't count the Pacers series where he was put in a position where he had to play some hero ball, you know, I still think that that's still not something Donovan does great, right? Like his passes just aren't at the level of timing that you need him to be at, especially when he's getting, like, especially in the playoffs, right, where his turnover rate tends to jump up a little bit. Yeah. So I get the thought about it. I would still probably not be a fan of it. Like, here's the difficult thing with Darius for me, right? I think Darius is at this weird point to where he's too good and young of a player to give up on, but I understand the flaws and frustration that pops up with Darius, right? The question is, like, can you win a championship with a dude like that there, or should you structure your roster in a way that's different? Now, here's what I'll say, that way that offense could work, to your credit, right? The one you bring up with Donovan Mitchell. If Evan Mobley turns into somebody who can like legitimately develop and handle and facilitate the offense, then I think that has a chance, right? Yeah. And we're talking about building through Evan. That's where I think that changes things, because then it's not all on Donovan. Then Evan can handle some of that load there, and then you can have somebody like who would be a good guy to throw in there, like I'm gonna just pull somebody, like if you could just draw 2014 Klay Thompson out of nowhere and place him on that roster, right? That's exactly who you want, like a flamethrower. Then yeah, I can see that working out really well. One, I think it's gonna be really hard to find that two guard, like, because I don't know how you're gonna move pieces to get that guy. Yeah. But yeah, like I'm not close to the Cavs restructuring things and switching things up and making a big swing. I'm just cautious on how low we are on Darius Garland might talk us into doing something that's more of a downgrade for the team overall. I kind of compare it to where Dallas was with Kristaps a couple of years ago, where they were all low on Kristaps. They just gave him away, right, to the Wizards, because they were like, we're better without him, right? Addition by subtraction was the line coming out of there. And a lot of people agreed with that at the time. And then you look back and you're like, oh, that was a real bad. We were way lower on Kristaps than we should have been. That was a bad move. Or even somebody like Jalen Brunson, who they let walk. I don't want to be the Mavericks, right? And I think there's a real clear path here for the Cavs to be the Mavericks if they just are buying in on how low the fan base is on certain players versus what the actual perception of these players are, or at least the reality of these players are. I think we're really low on Darius, and I think that's when I'm like real cautious about making a move there, because it's like, we might make a move, because right now, I've argued with my brother about this all the time, where he wants to bring in Jalen Suggs, right, as like a key piece to replace Darius, and I'm like, I feel like we're gonna regret that in 2 years, right?
I would agree with that,
yeah, and I don't want to be in that situation, and I think it's more likely than not, if you can get a piece that is like a Klay Thompson type player, like, you know, on that trajectory that Klay was, obviously not going to be as good as Klay. Klay's a Hall of Famer, but, you know, somebody who can fill that role at that level, then yeah, like, okay, I'm more willing to experiment, right? It's just, I don't know if you're gonna be able to swing that right now, because I can't even think of a player in the league that really fits that role right now. Yeah. Let alone a player that's available. So I get what you're saying. It's just, for me, I don't think you're going to be able to build the roster around Donovan Mitchell in the way that's necessary in order to make that work at the level that the Cavs would need it to work at.
Yeah, to be clear also, I said this in my video too. I'm not for Darius Garland really getting traded. I believe now, I do believe if you can find the right package for him, I'm taking the deal because I would much rather have a taller backcourt. And if we're able to get a taller backcourt with the right offensive prowess at the same time, I'd feel comfortable having Donovan at that combo guard position if it's for the right price. But with that being said, I'm under the stance right now that the best way for the Cavs to go is to continue to roll it with Darius and Donovan and maybe get bigger to the point where Max Strus isn't playing more small forward minutes. I'm just not a big fan of it. And I think that's also kind of where the Cavs problems come in. I'm not a big fan of him at small forward. But I'm under the stance right now of I'm cool with Darius and Donovan. But hypothetically, if Donovan were in a situation where he was the combo guard, I'm feeling fine.
Yeah, I think it depends on the situation.
Yeah.
For me. It really does. Like, how good do I feel about Evan Mobley being able to do some of this stuff? I think that really determines it for me. The thing with Darius, too, it's been interesting, like, to see the powers that be kind of like focus all of what happened in that Pacers series on a guy who played 2 of the games in the series. Like, in one of those games, he was healthy. Like, I didn't think watching the Pacers series that Darius Garland was like the worst defender on the floor for the Cavs at the most time. That was Ty Jerome, right? Like, Ty Jerome was the only guy I looked at like, he can't be on the floor right now because of how bad he is defensively. And it's interesting, like, how so many people have focused in on Darius's like bad defense. I think really with the Cavs, what they discovered versus the Pacers, where they were built in a way to really withstand a Donovan Mitchell absence in the playoffs, right? Because they had so many guys who can fill that role. Maybe not to the same level as Donovan, but still function in that same role as Donovan. They had nothing for if Darius Garland went down. Like, I think their big plan was like, hey, we'll throw Donovan out there. Donovan will facilitate. We saw it work once in the regular season. And you kind of saw the holes that popped up when Donovan is your main like point guard, not necessarily because Donovan's bad at it, but just because you squeeze too much out of Donovan Mitchell at that point, right? You're asking him to do way too much. So I think addressing depth in the right positions, right? So like, okay, now with Larry Nance Jr., we're better able to hold up if Jared Allen misses a game or if Evan Mobley misses a game. With Lonzo Ball, one, I think it addresses some of that because you can put Lonzo out there with Donovan Mitchell, right? And still play big lineups, right? You could put DeAndre Hunter out there at the 3, Larry Nance at the 4. You could play Evan at the 5 if you want to give Jared a blow. Like, I think they have found a way to make some of that happen, what we talked about. And in their rotations, it's just not going to change their starting lineup, right? That's what I'm interested to see, right? Because they did address some of this stuff. They did get a backup point guard. They did get a backup big. And I do think the Cavs are at the point to where, unless you can get Giannis, your best path forward is making these like structural tweaks to this roster to be able to better withstand a larger amount of challenges that you're going to face in the postseason.
Yeah. Well, Quincy, I appreciate it as always. Love the talk we had here. You know, I had to confront you about the Donovan Mitchell take. I'm sorry. When I heard it,
it's good though. Like that's what
it is. Yeah.
So often on the internet, like I'll have disagreements with people, and then people like kind of like talk this up into something, and like it's actual beef, and it's like we just disagree on something about sports. Like it's really never that deep. Like I'm not. If I'm wrong and you were right on this whole thing, I'll be like, Maliq was right. Like fuck it. Like, the Cavs are better at the end of the day. Like okay, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Q, I just want to thank you one more time because the first time you came on my channel, I was 13 years old. I'm 18 now. So
damn, I feel old. I think I saw one of your videos where I was like going on YouTube and I saw one of your videos pop up. I was like, I wasn't sure it was you. I'm like, is this he? Is this the ultimate Maliq? Like, is this? Nah, it's a grown man now, dog. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. So I just want to thank you for all the help you've lended to me over time. Like all the times you came on the show, even now. So thank you for continuing to have a hand in my development. And just I always appreciate it, man.
I think it's important when you see somebody with that potential to encourage them, because like, you know, that was like people saying, hey, like, that's cool that you did that when I was like, you know, 10, 12 years old, trying to make something happen on YouTube just for fun, kind of spurred me into actually pursuing it and taking it seriously. And it's been a great thing for me. So whenever I see that with somebody else, you know, I always want to encourage it because I know how important that is. You know what I mean? Like, it's dope, you know? So appreciate you, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, this has been Quincy on the show today. Appreciate you guys for watching. Appreciate Quincy for coming on the show. Peace out, and I'll see you on the other side. Peace.